It was a quiet morning in early spring when Mark, a seasoned coin enthusiast, shuffled through a stack of change on his kitchen counter. Among the dimes and pennies, something gleamed, a quarter, just like any other at first. In a small-town diner just outside Flagstaff, Arizona, an elderly man sat sipping his morning coffee, flipping casually through the change he'd received from the cashier. His fingers paused over a small silver-colored coin. It was a dime, 10 cents, just enough to buy a piece of candy decades ago. But something about it made him look closer. The year, 2005. The mint mark, a tiny D just to the left of the torch. There was something oddly perfect about the way the light danced across its surface. He slipped it into his pocket with a smile. What he didn't know, and what many still don't, is that the 2005 D Roosevelt dime has become one of the quiet marvels of modern American coinage. Most people wouldn't notice it at all. Dimes, after all, are small and often ignored. They pass from hand to hand every day without much thought. But in the world of numismatics, where every detail, every imperfection, every nuance matters, the 2005 D dime tells a story far richer than its face value suggests. To understand what makes this dime remarkable, we must first look back to a time when the face of U.S. coinage was undergoing a philosophical transformation. In the early 2000s, the U.S. Mint was actively modernizing its designs, rolling out the 50-state quarters program, increasing public interest in commemorative issues, and revamping its production methods to improve precision. Amidst this backdrop, routine coins like the dime kept flowing quietly through the presses, often overlooked even by collectors focused on flashier releases. But the 2005 D dime wasn't just any coin. It was struck at the Denver Mint, which by then had developed a reputation for producing high-volume, high-quality coinage. Still, in any mass production process, the chance of creating something unintentionally unique is always present. And in this case, 2005 would become a pivotal year for error hunters, minting enthusiasts, and patient collectors. The Roosevelt dime, first introduced in 1946, was designed to honor Franklin D. Roosevelt, the only U.S. president elected to 4 terms. He had passed away in 1945, and Congress moved quickly to immortalize him on a coin. The design features his left-facing profile on the obverse, and on the reverse, a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. The 2005 D dime, then, carries forward that legacy, but with its own twist. Because that year, certain batches of the Denver-struck coins exhibited anomalies, tiny, subtle imperfections invisible to the casual observer. But for those who looked closely, these imperfections represented potential rarity. Some coins showed signs of double dies, where the design appears to be struck twice, giving a ghostly effect on the lettering or design. Others exhibited off-center strikes, or die cracks that snaked across Roosevelt's face like veins in marble. And then there were the full torch dimes. To the seasoned collector, full torch or FT designations are crucial. It refers to the clarity of the vertical and horizontal lines on the torch's flames and handle on the reverse. These details are extremely fine and often lost in regular circulation. A dime with a fully struck torch, showing all the lines cleanly and crisply, is rare. And the 2005 D dime produced some of the most impressive full torch examples in the modern era. But why does this matter? After all, isn't a dime just a dime? To most, yes. But to collectors, condition is king. A coin's grade, its level of preservation, determines much of its value. Most 2005 D dimes exist in well-worn condition. They've lived in pockets, purses, cash registers. They've been dropped on concrete, rubbed smooth in change jars, and forgotten in couch cushions. But the few that have survived in pristine condition, especially those graded MS67 or higher, and exhibiting full torch details, are remarkably valuable. It's easy to overlook the importance of a modern coin like this. There's no silver in it, no centuries-old patina. It wasn't hoarded during wartime or buried in a backyard treasure chest. It's recent. It's ordinary. But that, in itself, makes it more extraordinary, because when the ordinary becomes rare, that's when value is born. The numismatic world started buzzing in the early 2010s when auction results showed 2005 D dimes in ultra-high grades commanding serious money. Not hundreds, but thousands of dollars. A particular MS-68 FT specimen, perfectly struck and gleaming like it had never touched human hands, sold for more than $2,000 at auction. What was once a 10-cent coin had suddenly become a miniature masterpiece, a trophy for the eagle-eyed collector. These values weren't just numbers, they were wake-up calls. Suddenly, people who had ignored modern coins started looking at their change differently. Collectors began submitting 2005 D dimes for grading in record numbers, hoping to discover that one flawless gem. Coin roll hunters ordered boxes from banks and spent nights under bright desk lamps, inspecting one dime after another for even a hint of rarity, and among these seekers were stories of the everyday people who got lucky. A high school student in Kansas, checking through a roll of dimes for a class project, found a near-perfect 2005 D. He sent it for grading, and it came back MS-67 with full torch detail. He sold it and used the money to help pay for college textbooks. A retired Navy veteran in Florida discovered a slightly off-center strike in an old coffee tin. That dime sold for nearly $800 on eBay. These aren't fairy tales, they're modern legends, born from the quiet corridors of change jars and grocery store counters. And the 2005 D dime continues to make appearances in these small, serendipitous moments, but what keeps collectors coming back isn't just the chance of finding gold in the silverless. It's the romance of the hunt. The idea that hidden within the mundane might lie something extraordinary. That's the heart of coin collecting, not just the value in dollars, but the value in discovery, and so the 2005 D dime has etched its place in the timeline of American numismatics, not as a grand, ceremonial release, but as a humble coin with the heart of a lion. It stands as a reminder that sometimes, the most remarkable things come in the smallest packages, and if you're holding one now, you might want to take a second look. That tiny, shining piece of metal could be a modern treasure. The 2005 D dime doesn't shout for attention. It whispers. And those who are patient enough to listen closely find themselves entering a world where the most ordinary of objects becomes a doorway to something unexpected. To fully appreciate the place this dime holds, we need to revisit the long shadow of Franklin D. Roosevelt. His face graces the coin, yes, but his legacy is stamped into the very concept of the modern dime. Roosevelt wasn't simply chosen at random. His face replaced that of Mercury, the winged liberty of earlier dimes, not just because he was a beloved four-term president, but because of what he represented to the American people at the time. Roosevelt was a symbol of resilience. A man who led the country through the Great Depression, through World War II, and who refused to be defined by his own struggle with polio. It's not by chance that the dime became the coin that helped fund the March of Dimes, the foundation dedicated to ending polio, an illness Roosevelt had personally endured. Every dime, since 1946, has carried more than just monetary value. It carries a message. That message remains visible on every Roosevelt dime, including the one minted in Denver in 2005. The obverse is timeless, Roosevelt's strong profile facing left, framed by the word liberty and the motto "In God We Trust." The reverse, though simple, is rich with symbolism, the torch in the center, standing for liberty, flanked by the olive branch of peace on the left and the oak branch of strength on the right. Three ideas forged into metal, passed hand to hand millions of times a day, and yet, among those millions, a few stand apart. In 2005, the Denver Mint struck over 1.4 billion dimes. That's a staggering number. The idea that a single coin out of that billion could be special seems absurd, until you remember how precision works. At that scale, consistency is a challenge. Dies wear down, misalignments happen, and slight shifts in pressure, temperature, or timing can birth an anomaly. To the machine, it's a flaw. But to the collector, it's an opportunity. What makes the 2005 D so intriguing is that it produced multiple varieties and subtle deviations that have only grown in popularity over time. One such variety, noted by sharp-eyed hobbyists, features a slight doubling in Roosevelt's I and the letters in Liberty. Under magnification, it almost looks like the design is echoing, like a memory of itself lingers on the metal. This doubling isn't dramatic, but in coin collecting, subtlety is sometimes where the true value lies. The Denver Mint itself has a storied reputation. Situated a mile above sea level, the facility has churned out some of the most well-struck coins in modern U.S. history. But even the best-run mint isn't immune to nature. Changes in humidity, microfractures in the dies, or a brief lapse in machine calibration can lead to distinct die breaks or filled dies, conditions which in 2005 led to a handful of fascinating error dimes, die chips, tiny lumps of metal where the die itself had cracked, appeared around the torch on some dimes. Others showed filled mint marks, where grease in the die obscured the mint mark partially or completely. These are the coins that set collectors buzzing, not because they were mistakes, but because they were unique. In a sea of uniformity, uniqueness is priceless, and so, over time, collectors began cataloging the many faces of the 2005 dime. They didn't just search for perfection, they searched for character. It was a quiet morning in early spring when Mark, a seasoned coin enthusiast, shuffled through a stack of change on his kitchen counter. Among the dimes and pennies, something gleamed, a quarter, just like any other at first glance. But as he turned it over in the soft morning light, the date on it read 2013, and just below the mint mark, D, a familiar excitement stirred in his chest. This wasn't just a regular piece of currency. This was a 2013 D quarter dollar, part of a remarkable series that, over time, has become one of the most talked about coins among modern collectors. Most people wouldn't even give it a second thought. After all, quarters pass through hands every day without fanfare. But in the world of numismatics, this coin tells a much bigger story. It's a story rooted in history, artistry, national pride, and the pursuit of value hidden in plain sight. For every collector, every coin has a tale, and the 2013 D quarter is no exception. To understand why this coin has captured so much attention, we need to rewind the clock a bit, to a time when the U.S. Mint was deep into one of its most ambitious coinage programs, the America the Beautiful Quarters program. This initiative, which began in 2010, was created to honor national parks and historic sites across all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the U.S. territories. Each year, 5 unique designs were released, each celebrating a different site of cultural or natural significance. In 2013, the series was in its 4th year. That year's quarters featured White Mountain in New Hampshire, Perry's Victory and International Peace Memorial in Ohio, Great Basin in Nevada, Fort McHenry in Maryland, and Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. Each of these quarters held its own charm, but the one struck at the Denver Mint, marked by the tiny D, began garnering unusual attention. Among them, the Mount Rushmore design stood out for reasons both artistic and mysterious. What made the 2013 D Mount Rushmore quarter different wasn't just the boldness of its design. It was the way it brought a deeply American icon to life in such an unexpected way. Instead of simply showing the finished monument, the quarter depicted workers carving the mountain in 1930s-era realism, a gritty, human moment immortalized in miniature metal. The level of detail was striking, with tiny chisels, scaffolding, and a sense of motion that belied its size. It was, in every way, a celebration of both the monument and the labor that made it possible, but the intrigue didn't stop at the design. Shortly after its release, collectors and hobbyists started noticing something strange. Some of these coins, all struck in Denver, had anomalies, tiny errors that only showed up under close inspection. Double dies. Misalignments. Unusual metal strikings. At first, they were dismissed as minor curiosities. But soon, word spread through online forums and numismatic conventions. This coin wasn't just beautiful, it was potentially valuable. As more collectors took an interest, demand surged. Coin dealers across the country began seeing a spike in inquiries. Was it the era varieties that caused this buzz? Was it the limited mintage figures? Or was it something less tangible, perhaps the feeling that this humble 25-cent piece captured something unique about American history and craftsmanship? Regardless of the reason, the 2013 D Mount Rushmore quarter quickly evolved from pocket change to prized possession. Stories began circulating about finds in coin rolls, garage sale change jars, even vending machines. One collector in Arizona claimed to have found 3 error varieties in a single week. Another, in Colorado, paid over $1,000 at auction for a high-grade MS-68 specimen with a rare die clash. And with each sale, the legend grew. Still, what fascinates many is how such a recent coin, just a little over a decade old, could be worth so much. Unlike the silver quarters of the mid-20th century, or the storied rarities of the 1800s, the 2013 D quarter isn't ancient. It doesn't gleam with precious metals. Its face value is still just 25 cents. Yet its appeal lies in its scarcity in top condition, the nuances of its minting, and the story behind its creation. Collectors often say that coins are time machines, tiny windows into the past. And when you hold a 2013 D Mount Rushmore quarter, especially one of the higher graded or error types, you're holding more than a coin. You're holding a piece of a nation's tribute to its landmarks, a tribute to artistry, and to the quiet laborers whose efforts are so often forgotten. Now, as this coin story ripples through the collecting world, its value continues to rise. Uncirculated versions, especially those graded MS-67 or above by PCGS or NGC, are commanding prices well above face value. Some examples have sold for hundreds, even thousands, depending on the error type or condition. And for the most pristine, rarest examples, the market has begun to whisper of 5-figure price tags. Yes, you heard that right. A coin that might be sitting unnoticed in a jar in your kitchen drawer could be worth up to $15,000 or more, if it's one of the few with the rare combination of error, strike, and condition. It's the ultimate treasure hunt, hiding in plain sight. So next time you're handed your change at the store, take a moment. Look at your quarters. Check the date. Check the mint mark. Because buried in everyday life, there may just be a 2013 D quarter waiting to tell its story, and maybe, just maybe, change your life. For many, a quarter is simply a means to an end, a way to pay for parking, grab a drink from a vending machine, or round out $1. But for those who truly understand what a coin can represent, the 2013 D quarter isn't just currency. It's a small monument of memory, history, and mystery combined. Let's step for a moment into the halls of the Denver Mint, the birthplace of this remarkable coin. Located in the heart of Colorado, this minting facility has been producing coins for over a century, each one rolled out under immense pressure, literally and metaphorically. The machinery hums with a precise rhythm, the air cool and clean, the metal scent unmistakable. Here, in 2013, amidst millions of coins struck that year, a few stood out not for their quantity, but for their character. The Mount Rushmore quarter's reverse was designed by Joseph Mena, a U.S. mint artist and engraver known for capturing motion and emotion in his work. Mena's depiction wasn't the expected patriotic portrait of the completed monument, it was something more raw, more human. In this design, you see the intense labor, the drillers, the scaffolding, the unfinished faces taking form. It's less about glory and more about grit. It was a conscious artistic decision, one that brings to light the human story behind a national symbol. These weren't mythical figures chiseled by divine hands. They were created by everyday men, working with explosives, steel tools, and determination. Some were immigrants. Some were veterans. All of them, workers doing a job that would leave a mark on both a mountain and a nation. And so, with the 2013 D Mount Rushmore quarter, you don't just see George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and Theodore Roosevelt, you see the men who carved them into eternity. That added dimension, that choice to show the process rather than just the product, makes this coin uniquely powerful. But the story doesn't end with design alone. As the quarters rolled off the presses in Denver, they entered circulation like any other coin. Most were flawless to the naked eye, smooth rims, sharp reliefs, and balanced details. But as collectors quickly discovered, a handful of them were different. Errors in minting are rare, but not unheard of. They're often caused by misaligned dies, overused equipment, or even mechanical slip-ups. With the 2013 D quarter, these imperfections added an element of suspense. There were reports of double dies, where parts of the design appeared to be duplicated ever so slightly, giving the image a ghost-like shadow. Others spotted die chips, tiny lumps of extra metal caused by damage to the dies themselves. Some coins had off-center strikes, where the design seemed to slide toward one edge. To the average person, these might go unnoticed. But for collectors, these flaws are golden. Each variety was catalogued, discussed, and debated in online forums and collector conventions. Videos popped up on YouTube of hobbyists comparing their finds. Could this one be a new type of error? Is that doubling on the Liberty inscription, or just a trick of the light? The buzz grew louder. The community rallied around this coin with the kind of fervor usually reserved for coins 10 times as old. Then came the grades that if you're new to coin collecting, here's how grading works. Third-party companies like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Company, evaluate coins based on their condition, assigning them a numerical grade from 1 to 70. A 70 is flawless, a perfect coin with no blemishes, even under magnification. Most coins that enter circulation might rate a 60 or lower, even if they still look shiny. With the 2013 D Mount Rushmore quarter, high-grade examples, especially those graded MS67 or higher, became hot commodities. The reasoning was simple: the higher the grade, the rarer the coin. And for this design, collectors were willing to pay top dollar. At auction houses, pristine versions of the coin began to command shocking prices. One MS68 specimen, just one tick away from perfection, sold for more than $3,000. And error coins, particularly those with die clashes or double dies, fetched even more. In a private sale, a collector paid nearly $15,000 for a 2013 D quarter with an ultra-rare reverse clash that had only been seen twice before. It wasn't just about owning the coin, it was about owning the story, the rarity, the moment.